Hi, it's your girl Jade, and you are watching Mary Seacole Housing Association's Youth Voices podcast, giving young people a voice. Today, we will be speaking about mindful voices and mental health within ethnic minority groups. I'm joined today by Pastor Lloyd Denny, who we will be interviewing, and then I also have two other very special guests with me, Bailey and Eve. So if we could just go around the room and then introduce a little bit about ourselves.
Well, thank you, Jade. As you know, I'm Pastor Lloyd Denny. I'm a local pastor here in Luton. I suppose the reason why you invited me is because I've been involved in a review on behalf of the Integrated Care Board, commonly known as the ICB. I did a 4-year study. The review is in this form, this booklet. The reason why I'm presenting it is just so that the conversation we have, you know, my background and what I contribute to this conversation, and for young people generally, you know what services will be available presently and in the future. So that's my background, but I'm a local pastor, and I was on the CCG, which is a clinical commissioning group, for many years. It's on the work I did there that I was asked to carry out the review.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Eve, 19, I'm currently in uni, and I've been working with Mary Seacole for a little over a year now.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. And yourself?
Hi, I'm Bailey. I'm the social media and activities coordinator at Mary Seacole. Been here for about a year now. Me and Eve work quite closely together. So, yeah.
Yes. So, let's get started, guys. Today we're talking about mental health within ethnic minority groups. I think that one of the reasons why this is such an important topic to discuss, especially when it comes to young people, is that it used to be something that was quite taboo to talk about mental health. So what are your views when it comes to like mental health, especially within like ethnic minority groups? Are there any things that you see different now that might have been back in the day as well? I'll start with you, actually.
I think you're right. Still, it is a taboo, sadly. It's getting better, but it's still a taboo in as much that some communities are more open to talk about it than others. And within this conversation around ethnic minorities are more likely to shy away from it as a conversation piece within families and even with wider communities. The review I conducted didn't go in great detail about mental health, but it did touch upon it. And we had on our board, on the steering group that delivered the review, an organization on the ELFT, East London Foundation Trust, and they are tasked with delivering mental health services across Luton and beyond. And their work still show that ethnic minorities are rather reluctant to talk about it. The only time they may accept it or get involved is when it's at the top end, when it's really bad, when there's a crisis, when there's a real big problem. But the earlier things, they kind of don't want. So it's still a taboo, but it's getting better.
Okay. What about yourself, Bailey? What do you think when it comes to this topic?
So, having worked as a supported accommodation officer, I've seen a fair few ethnic minorities come to the service, and a common theme with a lot of them is that, like, they're all very lonely, especially, like, because if you consider, like, say if you come from another country, you're going to have, like, language barriers, you're not going to have that sense of community, and it can, like, really shut you off, I think, especially in Luton at the minute, I think, because we do have quite a lot of ethnic minorities at the service. They do struggle to, like, reach out or, like, find someone that they can talk to. It can be really hard. I've seen it firsthand. So, yeah.
I think it can be difficult for people of different ages to fully understand now the whole impact that, because this is a completely different it's a new generation and everything. So it will always be difficult for another generation to relate to another generation in that sort of sense. So when they're going through something, it's the whole of not wanting to burden them because they might not be able to understand, and it's just a difficult barrier to try to get over.
Yeah, I definitely agree that when it comes to the generations, like, I think she also mentioned, she was like, you could be saying, you're depressed, and your parents or an older person within your family is like, oh, you're not depressed, and they just want you to get on with it.
It's so hard to like break that tradition of like when they've grown up with a certain like rules and stigma around your life, and then like new ones come in. It's hard to make that adjustment, which I think is why so many older generations just see it as, oh, you're not depressed, like just get on with it, you're being lazy. But it's actually like such a bigger thing than that.
I think that's where generational, like toxic generational cycles begin.
Yeah, 100%.
And that just like dawned upon me. I feel like toxic generational cycles begin that way because nobody's actually addressing their issues, like their mental health issues. So that person that's saying you're not depressed, get on with it, this, that, and the third. But the way that you carry on, the way that your attitude is, the way that you go on through life, and it actually will actually affect how people even view you and
100%.
converse with you, because they might be like, well, that person's quite a bitter person, or that person, because it does it when you're going through something, it affects your mood, it affects your attitude in general anyway. So can you imagine that person holding on to that for years, and then somebody like in the generation following up behind them mentioning, I'm depressed, and then they're telling them, well, you're not depressed, and it's like, okay, auntie such and such, but look at what you're going through because you didn't sort out your issues.
It's sad to hear it, but it says at least people are willing to talk, and that's what encourages everyone, that if you're willing to talk, then hopefully someone will help you.
Yes.
It is a generational thing in many ways. I am old enough to remember when these things were never spoken about. So we've made huge progress going forward. And I think the other thing I would add is we're not as aware as we should. What is depression? Is it something just you feel a bit low, or is it something more clinical?
Yeah.
It's the connection between the low end and the top end. And as a parent, you never would like to think you want your son or your daughter to be depressed. Get on with life. We went through the war. We went through poverty. We went through unemployment. What are you on about?
Yeah.
And it's an easy thing to say as an adult, because you feel, well, we've survived. Why can't you?
Yeah.
But I don't think most adults or older people believe it. It's just they don't know how to handle it. To see your son or your daughter or your niece or someone close to you is obviously not very, very well. You won't like to shake them back to being well. You try to encourage them, and you really don't have the expertise. And for a long time, there weren't a lot of help out there. You had a psychiatrist or a psychologist at the top end, and only mad people or sad people or bad, whatever, go to these places. That's sadly the view of so many. Whereas you're not talking about, I am mentally sick, you just need some form of help. So if you can fix it early, perhaps you will not get to the very top end. And it's accepting that this needs to be done. Parents, adults are not too keen on it. We seldom will go to a GP or doctor if we're having depression. The only time they may get involved is if we have an episode, and then others get involved. So it's a difficult thing, but it's getting better.
Yeah, I do agree that it's getting better. I think that more people are speaking about it like ourselves, which brings attention to the issue. But like I said before, that generational cycle does get affected, but where the conversation is happening, I think that all we can do is move up from here when it comes to this topic. So we have some questions for you from the young people of our local area within Bedfordshire, Pastor Denny, and we have them in this wonderful vase. And I'm going to have Eve and Bailey pick a question at random, and then they'll read it to you, and then you'll be able to address and answer the question. And then we'll try and get through as much as possible, because we really want the young people's views to be heard. This is what it's all about. So, are you ready to start? Let me give it a little Little tombola.
Thank you. Right, first one.
Mm-hmm.
Do cultural values differ people of minority ethnic groups from wanting / being able to have access to mental well-being services?
Yes, it does. It does. It does. The review that I did around general health inequalities bore that out, and even on an everyday anecdotal level, we know that to be true. Some culture don't even want to admit that there's such thing as mental breakdown. Not because it's denial; it's just that it's seen as weakness. Some who arrive into the UK and they're quite new. They don't want to be seen as a drain on the wider society, and anyone with mental health problems clearly might be viewed as a burden rather than a helper. So you have that element, and most families don't really want to think that the members of their family are not coping either. One of the big things in the review around health generally was that some communities were not very keen on owning up to the struggles they're having. They kept it within their own community. Because to go outside of their community was seen as failure. But the more we encourage it, the more we talk about it, and that's why I'm very happy to be part of this podcast, because if we can get more people to talk about it, then hopefully more people will get help. And help doesn't have to be ongoing. You know, when I break my arm, it's not broken forever. It may be for a few months or a few weeks, and it'll be set. People's mental struggles can also be improved. So I may be pretty miserable now, pretty low now, but I can recover with the right help, right support. And so no one needs to think, well, it's a permanent condition. It isn't. Treatment is available, help is available. And as long as we remember that, I think we give everyone an opportunity to open up, get the help, and move on.
Thank you. Are you ready? I am ready.
Why is mental health disregarded when it comes to black men?
Ooh.
That's a big one. It isn't really disregarded, but I know why people say that. Because black men are unwilling to accept it. They tend to keep away from others when they're struggling. You say, well, why don't you talk to your friend? They're not that keen. Don't know why. I mean, men in particular, but black men, I suppose, is a larger percentage. It's a complicated reason. And sadly, there's not enough research around this. And one of the review I did recommended further research or serious research, because I didn't go into it myself. It was really about physical health as opposed to mental health, though there's a bit of it. And we recognize that we don't know enough. And we can't have one service for everybody. You know, the old story, one shoe fit everybody.
Yeah, like one size fits all.
One size fits all, that's the right. We can't do that because ultimately we're different. And black men are different. And the numbers are disproportionately high for black men relative to the population. So there is a problem. And I think things like this, more education, more awareness will help. And I think there's a generational change too.
Yeah.
Younger men are more willing black men are more willing to at least talk about it.
Yeah. I did want to add something. I feel like as well one of the reasons why it was asked is, well, from what I've seen in society today, is that something in the news could happen where somebody could commit a crime or do something bad or have some kind of episode. Like you said, sometimes within our culture it's not addressed until something like that happens. But when it is, it's like with our white counterparts, it's, oh, this person had mental health and maybe, they were going through X, Y, and Z, but then with a black man, they'll be like, oh, this thug, this, that, and the third, and the stereotype is kind of pinned on them as well. So I feel like maybe that's also why that question was asked.
And there's truth in it. I mean, growing up, every black person who was in an episode was schizophrenic. If you're a white person, you had something else called bipolar. I'm no clinician, but the point about it, the subtle differences. Where schizophrenia, you're thinking of the person about to attack you, he's aggressive, he's violent. Bipolar, well, he's just going through moments where he hasn't got it all together. But that's change.
Yes.
The subtle change is there. So it's true. And sometimes black men who are going through an episode is linked to violence, is linked to possibly drugs, and often it isn't. It's just a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
And that sense of empathy or compassion is not always there with a black man. And if the black man is louder, because when he has an episode, you can be loud, you can be aggressive, seemingly. Not that you're about to attack anyone, but that's perceived in a very dangerous way, where someone else may be given a bit more chance to you accept and you tolerate a little bit more. So some institutions need to be taught.
Yeah.
So, a police, for example, they certainly need awareness that things are not always as it appears. And if you come to it with a prejudice, you have an idea about a black man's behavior long before you meet one. Anything that looks a bit odd, you start add all the dots together: aggression, violence, drugs, or whatever. And that is why even the police are now wanting to open up a little bit more, because they know if you get it wrong, it can lead to someone dying in custody. And it happens. Someone's having an episode. Instead of seeing them as someone needing help, you see them as someone who's an aggressor. And that's where it gets ugly. So you're right. But the more we talk about it and the more we inform the institutions, the better the outcome will be for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. You ready?
Can you advise what the free mental health services are locally?
Yes, it's all over the place, really. But let's take the big one, the ICB, Integrated Care Board. They're located, you can't really miss them. Google, you'll find them. ELFT, East London Foundation Trust. They're situated, Charter House in town, Luton Town, not difficult. Their numbers, their contact details are all over the internet. They have outreach workers, they have community workers, they have clinicians. The Luton Hospital has got a part of the hospital dedicated specifically for people with mental health issues. So the services are there. There was a time in Luton where it was pretty poor, but since the new providers came in board 5 years, or more than that now, about 8 years ago, they've improved it no end. So if you know anyone that's having difficulties, they don't have to sit in quiet and suffer. There is help there. I don't work for any of them, so I'm not pitching it because I work for them. It's because I know the services are there, and the services have improved no end, where you can get help. Talking therapies. It doesn't always have to be, pumping you with drugs. There's talking therapy. You can be referred to psychologists, psychiatrists, all sorts of help. And if you really need further help, there's also on-site help where you can be supported on a ward, specifically there for someone who's having a difficulty. So don't allow the crisis to become so bad that you can't get any help. Help is there. Please take full advantage of the help, because any one of us can have a mental breakdown at some point, and it could be triggered by death in the family, loss of a job, loneliness, because under COVID, you know what happened. The numbers went through the roof because people were on their own, and sometimes they feared the worst, and consequently, they were struggling to cope because we're not allowed to meet anyone, talk to anyone practically. But please take the help and seek it out. It's there.
Thank you. Let me give it a little mix up.
Take this nice pink one.
Pretty and pink.
Is there a lack of mental health institutes that are willing to help those in ethnic minority groups without any further challenges?
We've said some of that already. No, I don't think there is. I think there is a difficulty sometimes. I mean, we're not. I will never say to you that the service is equal across the board. So what we identify is three things: access. It's not universally available. There's a postcode lottery type approach that still happens. It's not necessarily about race, but it is true that the black community tend to live in the poorer end of the town, and therefore that part of the town, the services may not be as good as the richer end.
Or there's less resources.
Resources. So that is true.
Yeah.
But away from that, there's help. And in a good way, help is often driven by need, clinical need. If the need is there, you'll get the help. But if you don't believe you need any help, then you won't go for it. So my advice is, if you're feeling pretty low, speak to your GP. Speak to someone in the world of medical help. Doesn't have to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist, because if you speak to your GP, the chances are, if there's anything of that nature, they may do the referral anyway with your support or with your agreement. But it is not universal. But we just have to make sure we take full advantage. So access is a problem, along with communication. Sadly, not everyone speaks this Queen's English or King's English perfectly, and you're not very. Health service speak can be very complex. It's very technical, because it's clinical. It's highfalutin. But if you get rid of all of that and think, well, I need help. Can I get it? It is there.
Thank you.
Why is there not more funding available to support people?
There's never enough funding. But what's there is a fair amount. The ICB has a budget in the billions. So we're talking about a significant sum of money. Population of the area in question is about 1 million people. There's never enough money because needs are multiplying. The quality of service needs to be improved. But the point is, there is money. It's a question of forget about it. And one of the good things about the NHS is it's delivered at the point of need. So if your requirement is £50,000, you'll get it. If my requirement is only £10,000, I'll get it. It won't be rationed, well, because yours is 50 and mine is 10, then I will get it and not you. It thankfully is not work that way. The people that make the decisions, clinicians, are not driven by budgets and money. That's not their business. Their business is to treat and help and support. So the services could always do with more money, but don't let that be a reason for not applying or getting help. So if you know anyone that needs help, you send them to the place to get help. Don't think about, can the system afford it? That's not their problem. It's not even my problem. It's driven by need, clinical need. And as long as the need is there, and the need doesn't always have to be, again, a clinician doing something to you. There's what was called social prescription or pro-social prescribing, where sometimes you can get a part of a service, you can get a clinician, a GP to recommend joining a gym. I know people have joined gyms on the NHS because it's there to help possibly depression or physical problems, and that going to a gym, going swimming, doing weights, whatever it is decided as a way of helping the person. Some people do other things, walking, talking. And so there's social prescription, but that's not about medicine and any of that. And it's all free on the NHS most of the times.
Another question for you, Lee.
Why is this not a government priority?
Well, I'm not the government, so I can't answer that one.
Let's try another
I
one.
can't- I mean, I think most governments, both parties will say it is a priority, but I think I know what you mean. I know what young people mean. The service could be better. It has been. It's the poorer cousin. Physical ill health, everyone understands. Broken arm, cancer, heart problem, brain problem. Everyone understands that quite well. And money do go after it. Money spent. Mental health is catching up. It's way behind. But young people, along with others, if you keep banging away the drum, asking those questions, then I think more money will then come into the system around mental health. So yes, it is true, because I think it's difficult to diagnose and it's hidden until it manifests itself, whereas a broken arm, everyone can see.
100%.
Hmm.
Another one here if you want me to read that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
And then we'll go to Eve.
Do stereotypes of ethnic minority groups affect the assistance they receive from most mental health service providers?
In a word, yes, but more than a word, because it's about what's called, there's a fancy term called cultural competency, which means if you are a black nurse or a black psychologist or black or Asian or whatever, you can identify with the person who's coming through the door.
Yeah.
And the chances are my quirky ways, like, let me give an example. When I first came to this country over 50 years ago, it was part of my upbringing. I came from the Caribbean, Jamaica, and I was told, you don't look at adults in the eyes. You don't look in, it's rude. So when I first came here and went to school and my teacher was talking to me, I do this all the time. And I lift up, and I couldn't do it because to me it's rude. You don't look at adults in the face, in the eyes anyway. And that was seen as odd. Yes, my brother, who's 3 years younger than me, we both came from the Caribbean, and he was deemed to be having mental problems, believe it or not, just for that. Because he was looking down, and the teacher keeps, look up, and he wouldn't. And he'd smile at it, almost a smile of embarrassment, and the teacher thought he was having mental difficulties. For starters, he came into the country with an accent, Jamaican accent, didn't know anything about anything in this culture, so anything odd is magnified problem. He wasn't in any way violent or aggressive, but did he need welfare or psychological support? My mother was brought into the conversation, your son is a bit odd, until my mother had to say, no way. He wasn't odd, it's just that we were brought up not to look at us directly in the eyes. That's a cultural thing.
I know that one too.
You know that one too.
Yeah,
now,
that's my
as an
background
older person now, I've got it, But if you come from a culture where you're not familiar, I mean, some cultures you can't hug and kiss easily either, because it's different. A shake hand maybe, high five maybe, but a male and a female hugging and you don't do it. Now that's changing, but these are cultural differences that if you don't know what's going on. When I was at school, I'll give you another anecdote. When I was at school, it was a trend where black boys were having dreadlocks. And teachers thought, what's that? Is it a sign of mental problem? Because your hair is wild and all over the place. They're not used to that. And so to have hairstyle like that, you must, because if you look at old photographs of people with unkempt hair, even white folks with unkempt, that's not combed or not cut, it gets wild and tangly, as if they've got, and especially if they're not shaved as a man, they look wild and almost scary. If you watch any old movies with men that are portrayed in that way, you can see their hair, it's natty and miserably looking because it's dirty. They then project that image that they had onto a black person who had a hair like that, all because it's an hairstyle. Some schools didn't allow girls to plait their hair in this country because you're seen as weird, odd.
Until
So
it became
it's
trendy.
culture until it became trendy, or the knowledge was shared. So culture does play, and if you talk about strengths and weaknesses, a teacher is strong, a child is weak. A police officer is strong, a teenage boy is weak in terms of power ratio. And if you're a younger person and you're meant to feel somewhat below or inadequate or something's wrong with you, you internalize it. And if you're not careful, it starts to
Yeah.
play on your own sense of value and worth. Why is it some black people start to bleach their skins?
Yeah.
Because they're told black is not so good, white is the better way to go. So you want to lighten your skin.
100%. Social media definitely plays into that as well.
Yeah.
You look at celebrities and like they're bleaching their skin, or they're like having certain hairstyles and things like that, and you think like, oh, I need to conform to that in order to be fitting
Beautiful,
this like westernized
presentable.
image.
Yeah.
And it's like, no.
And so
don't
then
need to do
you
that.
can internalize it as a person thing, because you can never literally change the color of your skin.
Yeah.
You can lighten it maybe, but it's dangerous. So if you go down that road, you then start internalizing it. I'm not beautiful enough.
Look at Michael Jackson.
Well, I'll say no more.
Well, thank you guys so much for picking these questions. I just want to shout out all of the young people within the local area as well for sending their questions through. We really want your voices to be heard, and so this really helped. We're going to put this away now, and we're going to give our final thoughts on what we spoke about today when regarding mental health within ethnic minority groups. I'll kick it off and then I'll give you guys the floor. I think that I really like the questions that the young people actually sent in.
Agree.
They were hard hitting, but they were really good, and I think that they didn't hold back on what they really wanted to know. I feel like it is something, as Pastor Denny said, that the more we converse about it, the more we become, I guess, educated about it, and we can actually start to resolve the issue. I think that if there is anybody out there that is dealing with anything when it comes to their mental health, as Pastor Denny said, there are services out there. There's did you say the EL?
Well, that's organization, ELFT, East
ELFT.
London Foundation Trust.
Yes, there's also like the Wellbeing services within Luton. There are you can call Samaritans, which is
There's
just if you
Crisis
need a
Cafe.
chat. There's Crisis Cafe that you can go to with Mind,
talking therapies
Yeah.
as well.
and they do the social prescription as well for like going
Yeah.
to the gym and things like that as well. So if there is anybody that needs help out there, maybe we can leave some of that information of who to contact within our description below. Bailey, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the things that we've discussed today. I do think that there is a bit of an inequality for ethnic minorities, because if you think about all the things that play into it, like stereotypes, language barriers, all the things mentioned by the kids that we've had come on today, it's hard. It's hard in general. I think mental health services are stretched. From my own experience, I've seen that it can be really hard to go through things like that. Got friends that have been through things like that, and they do still like struggle to open up and seek support, but it's those first steps that are going to get you in the right direction. There are people out there that care about you. There are people that want to listen. It's just taking those first few steps and getting yourself out there and knowing that there is help and there is support.
Definitely. Eve, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time this sort of topic is said to be spoken about, but I don't think it truly is properly, deeply spoken about. Like, where we've been talking about it now, I've started to realise that it's not really everything that I thought I knew about it. I don't really know that much. So it's definitely something that I would probably more likely to know about, I think.
And Pastor Denny, what are your final thoughts? And could you also tell us about the Denny review as well?
I mean, none of us know enough. We don't know enough about the physical, really. We have an idea. That's why we look to clinicians to diagnose this and diagnose that. So if that's true in the physical, it's certainly more so in the mental, because very few can say they know enough. So what then do? We seek help. We talk to family, friends. We talk to people that care about us. It's not easy, but we must learn to do so, because at the end of the day, it could bring help to us far sooner rather than later. And no one wants to end up in a crisis before they get help. As far as the review goes, this is available. You can download it online. The ICB, Integrated Care Board for Bedfordshire, Luton, Milton Keynes, just Google it, it's there. You can Google it, you can read it, it's all there. And more than that, keep an eye on the delivery side of the report, because that's where the money is going to be spent, that's where the services are either going to be improved or not, and that is where you'll have a say. There's now a delivery plan that's doing the rounds, where young people and everybody has a chance to shape what the actual service might look like going forward. So it's a 5-year recommendation program. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight. But there are certain things that are going to happen straight away. And things are happening right as we speak. But the whole idea is the money, whatever money is, billions we're talking, should go towards the services and not the other way around. So the money's there, the services are there. You can tweak it, you can change it, you can improve it by your involvement and by what you have to say. So writing, texting, email, attend meetings, and encourage other young people to do the same. Because ultimately, in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you'll want the very best of service for yourself and your family members.
Thank you so much. I'd just like to thank Eve and Bailey for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
I really appreciate your input.
Thank
Gives me the
you.
warm fuzzies. Pastor Jenny.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you so much for your contribution to the community as well. I think things like this mean a lot to me because sometimes when you have figures within our community, you are the people that we look to for some of these things. So for you to be involved in other things such as this and writing your review, we really appreciate it, and we thank you for coming and answering some of the young people's questions today as well.
Thank you so much,
Thank
guys.
Thank you.
Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. We hope that we were able to give you some insight today when it comes to mental health within ethnic minority groups. As mentioned before, if you do need any help or you know anybody that might need any help when it comes to their mental health, there'll be some information in the description box below. And we pray that you have a good day. Bye.
Bye.